And for more on the UNRWA funding row, we're joined by Srinjoy Bose. He is a senior lecturer of politics and international relations at University of New South Wales. And also, he joins us live now from Sydney. Now, Dr. Bose, how critical is UNRWA when it comes to aid and relief operations in Gaza? We heard earlier it being referred to as a lifeline. But what other sources of aid can Gazans turn to?
Angela, thanks for having me on. UNRWA is the main humanitarian organization on the ground, providing relief to about 2.3 million Palestinian refugees in Gaza, 2 million of whom directly benefit from UNRWA's assistance. People are sheltering in UNRWA schools, in tents provided by UNRWA. Food provisions go through UNRWA. Most healthcare services are run by them. So, to sum up, without UNRWA providing humanitarian relief, there will be no humanitarian relief in Gaza. There are obviously immediate to long-term impacts of this.
And we want to get to those impacts in just a bit. But before we do that, we know that the 9 donor countries have suspended funding. We took a look at those earlier, and they make up about 60% of UNRWA's budget. It deals a significant blow to the relief efforts on the ground. What will this mean for the people of Gaza in the next few months and also in the longer term?
Sure. And this goes back to what I alluded to before as the short to long-term effects on Palestinians. The immediate impact on Palestinian peoples will be worsening of the ongoing catastrophe. The death toll will likely increase, and more persons will be forced to flee outside of Gaza. The long-term impact of the decapitation of UNRWA, so to speak, will be destroying the Palestinians' right to return to Palestine.
Now, we also heard that the UN chief Antonio Guterres has vowed accountability if any of the staff was found involved in the attack. How long could this process take? And also, what does this accusation mean for the UN's reputation as well as its internal operations?
Look, Angela, I think it's important to understand that these are only allegations at the moment. The UN has committed to investigate these allegations and terminated the contracts of about half a dozen or so UNRWA employees. But I think the larger implication of this or takeaway is that you don't suspend life-saving aid based just on allegations. At a time of extreme humanitarian catastrophe, UNRWA is made up of about 13,000 core employees, and that figure balloons up to about between 28 and 30,000 other Palestinians. And we're only talking here about half a dozen or so who may be implicated. So again, important to reiterate, these are only allegations at the moment, and the UN has committed to investigating these.
And despite it being allegations, many of the countries have already decided to suspend the funding because of that breach of trust, so to speak. What would it take for UNRWA to regain the trust of donor countries and for them to then resume their contributions to provide aid for the people in Gaza? Or has the damage already been done?
There's a two-part response to this question. I don't actually think the onus is on UNRWA at the moment. The onus is on the Western community not to withhold life-saving aid, to commence aid at the earliest opportunity, and above and beyond, first to call for a ceasefire. A ceasefire will enable aid to reach the Palestinian populations. Without a ceasefire, it is very difficult to ensure the life-saving aid will reach Palestinian populations. So I don't actually think the onus is on UNRWA. The onus is on Israel to stop egregious violations against populations, civilian populations, and the Western community to provide aid. It is also important to remember that withholding of funding to UNRWA, which is providing this life-sustaining relief to refugees, could amount to complicity in genocide under the Genocide Convention, and also goes against the recent ICJ judgment, which noted that deliberately inflicting on Palestinians in Gaza conditions of life calculated to bring about their physical destruction in part or in whole is a breach of the Genocide Convention. So it is possible that allies of Israel can be complicit in flouting the Genocide Convention.
And Dr. Bose, in the meantime, what are some possible solutions being explored for the aid to continue reaching these displaced Palestinians who right now are facing starvation and, of course, a lack of healthcare as well?
Ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire.
We also look at the accusation casting a spotlight on the UN facilities and the resources being siphoned for military purposes. How can this be prevented from happening again?
I haven't seen any evidence of that. I don't necessarily think that's actually the question we should be asking at the moment, particularly when there is no evidence for that.
And right now, also, the right-wing Israeli ministers are calling for a rebuilding of Jewish settlements in Gaza. How will this accusation leveled at UNRWA, as well as the latest developments on the ground, impact Israel's overall strategy in the war?
I don't think it'll impact over Israel's strategy. It is part of Israel's strategy. There's a clear strategy at work of deliberately targeting the Palestinian national group in part or in whole by destroying education infrastructure, healthcare infrastructure, depriving the population of access to water and food, which is a strategy to forcibly remove Palestinians from their land, the targeting of children, essentially the next generation. And so the smearing of UNRWA, the delegitimization of UNRWA, is part of this broader Israeli strategy.
Dr. Bose, thank you so much for your insights. So that was Dr. Srinjoy Bose joining us live from Sydney. And more on that story. Extreme Israeli factions are calling for Jewish settlements to be rebuilt in Palestinian territories that Israel pulled out from nearly 2 decades ago. They believe it is the only way to ensure security and to prevent a repeat of the 7th October Hamas attack. Thousands of supporters gathered in Jerusalem, some chanting Oslo is dead, referring to the landmark agreements that gave Palestinians limited self-rule. Others called for the deportation of Palestinians from Gaza. And taking that same stance was National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir. Firing up the crowd, the far-right coalition partner called for voluntary immigration in Gaza, urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to make what he calls a brave decision. He wants Jewish settlements rebuilt in Gaza and northern West Bank. Israel unilaterally withdrew its troops and settlers from those areas in 2005. The move is aimed at improving Israel's international status. Now, right-wing factions continue to call for settlement expansion, and more than 400,000 Israelis now live in settlements in the occupied West Bank. The communities are considered illegal under international law, and Prime Minister Netanyahu's official statements have so far rejected resettlement in Gaza. And we have more coverage of the war between Israel and Hamas on our website, cna.asia, and mobile app, including this story on plight of displaced Palestinians in Gaza.